I've been in this industry ever since I was 15 years old when I could first start working in Los Angeles, where I grew up, and I just knew from the beginning of my career in restaurants that respecting the associate in its workplace is so crucial, especially in the restaurant industry, and crucial to building a successful restaurant and a future for the restaurant. Because if, as the phrase goes, if the associate is happy, then the guest will be happy, and we really believe in that. But also, we want our associates to feel really good every day and feel that they're being not just respected, but thought of in decisions that are being made in the restaurant and their well-being. And as we all know, the last 2 years has really put that to the forefront, especially from the health of associates, which hasn't always been at the forefront in the restaurant industry. Oftentimes, it's more about the bottom line and about revenue for the restaurant than it is about those that are working in the restaurant. And we've always viewed that our associates are more than just a number. They're a lot to us. They are an individual that has a huge impact on our restaurant, from the dishwasher to the prep team. And we have many families that are within our restaurant. We have a mom and two daughters. We have two sisters. We have another two sisters. So it's really crucial to inspire our associates every day, because then when you inspire the associates, the thrilling our guests comes right after it. And that's so crucial to the success of Hearth and Hill.
I think, Joanna, it starts with family ownership. You're looking at the 100% of the ownership of all of our restaurants. And we extend that to the culture for all of our associates, so that, just like what Brooks said, everything is in the context of taking care of our people like you would take care of family. And so, to just put a finer point on what Brooks said, I think it starts with culture, a family, team, supportive culture. It includes compensation and benefits that we believe are not just competitive, but in the case of benefits, probably industry best. I mean, from the start, before the pandemic, we offered healthcare insurance, a 401k plan with a company match, a number of other benefits for our associates. It starts with a nice environment where people in the kitchen are working with new equipment, state of the art. It's fixed promptly. They're not dealing with broken sinks and broken this and broken that. People take that for granted in restaurants. We don't. It includes growth. Brooks and I, from the beginning, have capitalized this company to be strong enough, not just to withstand a pandemic, which we never expected, but beyond that, to grow. Why is that good? Well, it provides professional development opportunities for all of our associates. And Brooks has already promoted a number of our people. And so to have a career in a restaurant, that's almost unheard of, right? I mean, people just view it as a way to make enough money to pay this month's rent and then move on to a real job. We want this to be a real job. And so there's pride in them. And then finally, what Brooks said, we're really transparent. We mentor our managers. We share our financial results and planning with them. Why? Because so many managers and salary or hourly people drawn to the industry aspire to have their own restaurant one day. And we want to be known as a company where they can do that and learn from us, Brooks and I, and other experienced people. And if they want to move on, that's fine.
So what do you think is the root cause? I know we were speaking a little bit about this, but what do you think is the root cause of the labor crisis right now as it pertains to the restaurant industry?
Brooks, you want to start?
That's the $1 million question. I think that everybody's trying to, understand and figure out on a daily basis. And it feels like every day that you look online at the news cycles that there's another story about, this restaurant had 25 interviews and only 2 showed up, or this restaurant hired 10 people and only 1 showed up, or, all these different stories. And so I think a large part of it is it's really the pandemic has caused people to rethink where they are, what they're doing, where they want to go. It's kind of put a pause in some respects this first couple of months when everybody was at home and had more time than ever before to kind of look in the mirror, literally, and kind of slow down. I think everybody's been moving so quickly in their lives that the pandemic has caused people to take a break and understand, like, all right, where am I and what path do I want to go on? And is the hospitality industry where we want to go? I mean, for example, we just offered a general manager position to a gentleman here locally in Salt Lake that had been working for Buca di Beppo for 5 years. had grown through the chain. It was working 60, 80 hours a week. And then took a break about 8 months ago and started working for a commercial lighting company. And we made him an offer, and he came back to us 2 days later and said, you know what, I thought about it, and I don't want to go back in the hospitality industry. I want to stay in lighting. And so I think it's really caused people to understand, all right, do I want to give the hours? And then it's caused restaurants to reevaluate how we operate in ways, and ensuring that work-life balance is a priority, which it has been for us since day one, since we opened. Something that we've committed to our management team in particular, to ensure that they are going to get a work-life balance. They'll get their 2 days off a week. They're not going to work 12, 14, 16-hour days. Maybe, once or twice, a few times during the holiday season. We have the Sundance Film Festival, other busy times of the year, but otherwise we respect their time because we want them to be at 100% when they're in the restaurant, but we also want them to be 100% when they're at home. And then honestly, I think the other thing, I told this to someone over the summer, is that high school and college kids have single-handedly saved the restaurant industry, I think, in some respect. And so we've got a great pipeline to the local Park City High School here, many of which are hosts, are bussers, are runners, and respecting their flexible schedule. Many play sports, but then also work. And I think it's great because it allows them to learn tools that they'll keep with them for their life. I started when I was 15, and I know working in restaurants really benefited me when I went to college and kind of went into the real world.
Yeah, a few key that I've heard. Oh, I'm sorry, David. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say a few key things I heard that you said were that seemed to be really getting involved with within the community, which obviously it's a little bit different since you guys are smaller and more regionally focused. And I think that is a key element. And also I heard flexibility, which that keeps coming up time and time and again.
Yeah.
Where we talk about labor and what can you do to help people stay on board. So why do you think flexibility is important?
Yeah, it's crucial. I think many of us, including myself, grew up in a restaurant industry where there was this mindset of just, you're expected to be there 12 hours, 14 hours, almost FaceTime. And I think that obviously has gone out the window and has been changed, whether it's the millennials or whoever, but I think it's a needed change, and one that we welcome and are grateful to have into the restaurant industry. And so flexibility is something where you don't need to be there just to be there. If you've done your job and the work is done and the restaurant's in a good place, then go home, go do what you need to do, and be able to enjoy that, because then that's going to make that person feel better about wanting to come back the next day. If they're forced to be there for a 12, 14-hour shift they don't feel like they need to be there for, it's not going to make them feel good. And so I think flexibility in understanding people's needs, our chef, Jordan Harvey, is phenomenal at flexibility, where he out of his own pocket has, when he's needed some of the prep team to stay an extra couple hours, he'll pay for them to get an Uber or Lyft home because many of them don't have the transportation. When the vaccines first came out, he would drive them to their vaccine appointments. And I asked him this a few months ago. I said, we pay competitive wages, but I'm sure some of these line cooks with the market out there today at a country club or a hotel where they're able to pay much higher hourly wages because they're desperate, that they, because they have a lot more corporate policies or whatever in place. So why do you think some of our line cooks have stuck with us? And he said, because we listen to them, that when they come to us and say, hey, my dad just died, we don't go back to them and say, sorry, I need you on the line tomorrow night. We said, great, how long do you need off? I'll make it happen. It's, yes, it's going to put us in a bind, but your family comes first. Or, hey, my brother is sick, or this, or hey, I want to go on vacation for a few days. It's listening, and it's understanding, and it's helping them out. I think goes a really long way. I think there's just too many people in the restaurant industry for too long that didn't listen.
You think that would be obvious, right? Like, kind of the answer is be a human being.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. And
But again, recognize, Joanna, the reason it's not obvious is that it's not possible for many of the restaurants. Many of the restaurants start from a position of labor shortage. They're already closed 2 days a week because they don't have the people to staff it. So when that next kitchen employee gets sick or wants to take time for bereavement or whatever, now they're really in a bind, right? And they view it as, I can't do that because now I'm going to close another day and then I can't pay rent. So it's a very self-fulfilling or perpetuating, I guess, kind of process where it's either a virtuous cycle, as we've tried to establish from the beginning, of having our employees back, our communities back, or if you start shorthanded, it just spirals downward. So yeah, we can play the long game because we planned for it from the beginning. When the pandemic on March 15th, 2020, when they shut down the mountains in Park City and gave us 2 hours, all the restaurants, 2 hours notice to shut down dine-in, okay? That's how much time we had. We were just closed for one day. We reopened well before any PPP loans or government stimulus or any of that was ever conceived, let alone executed. Brooks and I said, you know what? It's when the tide goes out, the old Warren Buffett line, right? It's when the tide goes out that you see who's been swimming without their swim trunks. And we said, we're going to have our employees' backs and we're going to have our communities' backs. It's when things are tough that it really is a test of, are you really sincere about a family culture? And we said we would be. And I think we, engendered even more loyalty and goodwill because employees learned they can count on us to have their backs.
Mm-hmm. And that's sort of like the intangible, right? The kind of that human touch. But then as for the tangible aspects of it, the paid time off and the work-life balance and all that. I think that what some operators might ask you guys is, so how do you afford that?
Yeah, it's called scale in a word. We have a larger restaurant than we might have originally planned because we are big believers in scale. And what does that mean? It means if you're going to do something, do it so that in success becomes self-financing and continuing as well. And so we can afford to do it because we make enough in revenues and sales that gives us cushion in order to afford to be flexible, in order to afford to do the right thing, et cetera. We're growing to continue that scale, to continue our success. We're expanding now. That's why we formed Leave Room for Dessert Eateries, which is a recent development. So that it does give you the financial cushion. Otherwise, your margins are so thin and your cushion is non-existent that when times get tough, you can't afford to do it. That's the simple answer. Now, underlying that is a 3-hour answer as to how do you achieve scale, okay? Yeah. How does Brooks and his team achieve the big growth in revenues that we've seen as people have flocked to Park City and stayed in Park City, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the fast answer.
Yeah. And I also saw that some of the cost savings does come from outsourcing some of your, for example, HR positions, et cetera. So how do you use outsourcing to kind of save on labor costs?
Yeah, I don't see it really as a savings, at least in the near term. It's savings long-term, again, because of scale. I mean, so that as you grow, your top line grows at a faster rate than those outsourced services. Initially, it's actually more of an expense because you're paying, professionals profits as opposed to simply an employee. But in my career, I became a very big fan of outsourcing things that are not your core expertise, okay? So what does that mean in the restaurant business? We want to have people on our payroll who are in the restaurant or very closely associated with the restaurant. And that doesn't include accountants and your HR people, your lawyer, your insurance person, et cetera, et cetera. Why is that important? Well, because the specialists in each of those fields have to spend a lot of time becoming specialists and staying specialists, right? And we want to benefit from people that know the laws and know the best HR practices. And how can we afford to provide our employees benefits in the 401k plan? Well, because we use HelpSide, which is an outsourced HR firm that has over 20,000 employees from small businesses like ours on their payroll. So our employees instantly benefit from scale because their benefit cost is lower because of being a part of a big pool. And we have a best-in-class 401k plan administrator because the 401k plan is not just our small portion of it, it's a large one. And you multiply that across accounting, et cetera. So we get the benefit of scale. Again, that's the key concept, Joanna. It shows up all over the place. We get it in our outsourced functions. And if your HR person was going to go on vacation or get ill or something, all of a sudden you're not scrambling to get payroll paid. Why? Because HelpSide has hundreds of people doing that. So we don't have to worry about that. And our associates don't have to worry about that. That's why you outsource, so that you get the benefit of the best people, you get the benefit of scale. And as you grow, it's easier for us to realize the benefits of scale and then to pass that along to our associates in the form of flexibility, benefits, et cetera. So it's win-win.
And I'm curious, with all these puzzle pieces being put in place with the benefits that you offer and kind of the labor strategies, what is your turnover rate right now, and has it changed since kind of putting these into place?
It's more stable today than it was 4 or 5 months ago. I think April, yeah, I'm trying to think. When we had, April, I think we had some, and then beginning of the summer, we had a decent amount of turnover, but now we've stabilized. We've got a really strong team in place. We just brought in a new GM and AGM on the same exact day, coincidentally, on the day after Easter, I think April 5th. And so anytime you have a new leadership come in, you're going to have a little turnover. And so a couple months after there was, and now that they've stabilized and had their foot firmly on the ground, it's really been able to develop a strong team that is stable and that's here. And so our turnover rate has really been limited.
Brooks, don't you think a lot of our turnover is just unavoidable, seasonal in a place like Park City, where people move on? I mean, our assistant GM, Paige, just moving to Colorado because her boyfriend's moving, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, and so a lot of that is unavoidable. It's natural. And we've also had examples of people, I think like Joey is one, right, who left sort of thinking grass is greener and then came back, when you realize, no, it isn't always greener.
Yeah, I think in the last year, we've had 7 employees that had previously left that have now come back and work for us again. So that's one of the biggest facts that I use on a daily basis of just how great, people want to come back after they've realized that, wherever they've gone is the right fit for them.
And just to clarify, have any of these things that you've introduced, either outsourcing some of your labor like HR or any of the benefits, are any of those new? Like, what is the timeline of those? Or is that just kind of how you've always done things?
That's how
we've done
we've
it from the beginning. Yeah. I mean, it's called lessons learned. Joanna, as they say, experience is what you get when you don't get what you really wanted. And as you can tell from my bald head, I have a lot of experience. So Brooks is the restaurateur, and I'm the business person, by background. And outsourcing is just one of those things that has spread in a lot of industries, not just ours. And we just brought it. Accounting is a great example. I used HR before as an example, but we are now upgrading our software. And it's all on the recommendation of our small accounting, growing accounting from Davies Allen, based in Heber, Utah, and growing very quickly through Utah. And it's because of their expertise in software for restaurant companies that are growing, and how can you do that most efficiently from a financial, tax, and other area. That's all because of Davies Allen. And so now Brooks and I have twice weekly Zoom workshops with the implementation team of that software. And there are countless other examples, and that's all because of outsourcing. If we had your traditional accountant on the payroll doing the books, there's no way that person would know about something like that, which is sort of state of the art in the industry, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And besides improving the software, what have you sort of learned, I guess, recently, let's say in the post-pandemic era?
Yeah, well, I mean, HR has been a daily resource for
Yeah.
Brooks, right? I mean, with all of the laws, the rules, the tax credits, and all the laws changing almost every day about what should we do, what should we make sure our employees know they can do in terms of taking time off if they've been exposed because of COVID, or worse, if they got COVID. It said, what are our paid leave policies, et cetera. There's so many things where Brooks can email or call somebody who he knows will have the answer immediately. I mean, Brooks, I'm sure you have other examples.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a big one, and just technology, I think, is a big thing that we've learned during the pandemic, both from an employee standpoint and obviously from an operational standpoint in the restaurant. I never thought we'd use handheld devices in the restaurant. I just ordered 2 more because our staff utilizes them, and it causes us to be more efficient as a restaurant, which I know is being utilized throughout the restaurant industry. And then online ordering, we had already put in at our host stand when we opened 3 years ago before the pandemic, a hot box and a cooler to keep to-go items warm and cold. One of the stories I love to tell is the few months before the pandemic, we were doing our budget for 2020, and my dad said, we got to grow curbside and takeout. We got to grow it. And the pandemic obviously did that for us and many restaurants around the world. And so I think being prepared for those was helpful, but technology also from the associate standpoint, that having an outsourced HR company like Helpside provides our team with a portal where they can go and check their pay stubs whenever they want, look at their W-2 forms. They can look at their health insurance options. So it's not old school where you got to set up a meeting and have the person there. It's all at their fingertips. And then same with scheduling platforms and all these things that when I was growing up in the restaurant industry didn't exist. And now it's so easy to trade shifts with an employee, send out messages about things that are going on. All that I think are very crucial to today's industry.
The Davies Allen accounting firm I mentioned a little bit ago has been really helpful with all the government stimulus, federal and state, where it's all Greek to Brooks and me. And they, again, are experts on all of this, so that, all of our organization can benefit from whatever is available out there. So yeah, there are a lot of examples during the pandemic of outsourcing helping us help all of our stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the final piece of the puzzle really for a lot of restaurant employees, so simple, is, hey, you're not paying us enough. And I'm curious if you guys raised your hourly wages or are thinking about raising hourly wages, and kind of if you'd be willing to share a bit more on that.
Yeah, no, we absolutely have. During the pandemic, our hourly wages have increased. We've had to get creative, and we've also did it in some respects for a certain position that has been tougher to fill. For example, an AM host position. Traditionally we pay our hosts a set wage, and the AM host position was a position that was needed during the week. And so we have, as I mentioned, a lot of high schoolers that work for us that obviously cannot work weekday AM positions. And so it's becoming challenging. So we raised the wages for a position that could work those shifts. They would also work other shifts, but so being creative in that respect. But a harder to fill position, we would raise the wages by 10 to 25% to increase in the capability of hiring an associate for that position. I think has been crucial. And then just, listening to the associates and try to get ahead of it before they come to us and say, hey, I'm going to go, Johnny's paying me another $1 more down the street at the other restaurant. Trying to get ahead of it and just listening, understanding how they're doing, checking in. Our general manager, chefs, managers all around the board do a great job of checking in with the staff on a daily basis and just asking, how are you doing? Which helps be proactive in that respect, that they can kind of keep their ear to the ground and understand, right, what's the mood? What are people feeling from a wage standpoint? And we, as I mentioned before, are big in feedback and listening to our associates and understanding what they're looking for and trying to do our best. But there will be times where we just get, outplayed and we just can't compete in some respects, or just don't believe that a certain associate is ready to be at that wage.
I think, the other more subtle, but to me, equally important thing is that we were very early on in having masks for our people, well before vaccines were invented. I mean, as background, Joanna, and I'm speaking to you from Los Angeles. I'm on the board of a prominent local hospital. My wife is a family nurse practitioner. So every day, early on, I was hearing and reading a lot about this. And I said to Brooks, look, masks are coming across the country. Let's get them. We were probably the first restaurant to get them. Why does that translate to employee and associate benefit? Well, if you can stay open and they can get paid and they can make more in tips, because then we can have guests coming in and we are open 7 days a week, unlike all these other restaurants that struggle to stay open 5 days a week. I mean, all that's part of the puzzle for them, right? Of knowing that they can count on Hearth and Hill restaurant, in this case, to give them the hours and the tips or the wages or both, to pay the rent and have something left over. And we sponsored a flu clinic. We've paid people to get vaccinated, and we paid them more when everybody gets vaccinated. I mean, it's all about their health, but also in everyone's enlightened self-interest, which is if you can keep the restaurant open and busy, they're all going to make more money. So that's a good thing for them too, not just raising wages, which is also necessary.
Mm-hmm.